and welcome today, people. I really wanted to talk today, just to make sure that the sound is good. I'm going to hold up this microphone. I wanted to talk today about the subconscious mind. And did you know that your subconscious mind is really a recording machine, and it just reproduces everything that you impress upon it? And I would also add that so is your nervous system. So why is this important? Because whatever we are doing on a daily basis, and more of the stuff that's unconscious of how we're reacting, how we're responding, the words that we say, all impress our subconscious and our nervous system. We program our nervous system to be unsafe all the time, or we program it to feel safe and to feel comfortable and to feel that we're actually responding to life from an empowered place. And so how do we figure out what are these subconscious beliefs? Because if you're here, I would imagine that possibly you've come across the information that our life is most of the time, like 95% of the time, dictated by our belief systems. And this is our subconscious beliefs. And only 5% of our day is really coming from our conscious mind of us really making conscious choices, because we tend to go unconscious most of the time, and we tend to behave from an unconscious state, right? From patterns. And those patterns are ingrained in our belief systems. So how do you figure out what your belief systems? Well, the easiest way is actually to pay attention to what triggers you, right? What gets you upset, what rattles you, what starts to annoy you, what starts to frustrate you. I'm going to put this down. Hopefully you can still hear me. And that's a way to actually figure out what my belief systems are. So one of the ways to have a way to take care of this for yourself and actually to figure this out is to kind of put aside 3 days where you're really going to pay attention to how you respond, how you react, the words that you choose to describe something, to talk about something, and the thoughts that you have. And you're going to have either a notebook or you're going to have your phone, which is fine, and jotting down every time that something kind of, for lack of a better word, triggers you or like rattles you or gets you upset and gets you kind of like not in a state of peace, basically, or not in a state of neutrality. And you're going to pay attention to all of those times, and you're just going to jot down, okay, what's actually happening in that moment. And then from there, maybe later on at a different time, you can look at, what are all the things in the day that, let's just say, got you upset or got you into a different state that feels, more uncomfortable or allows you to not be in the highest state that you wish to be in. And then once you write them all down, let's say in a day, you can later start to analyze it. And I would say analyze with a very loving, compassionate eye of you're being curious. You're wanting to observe, what happened today and what are the things and ways that actually got me not to be in a place of more neutrality and more in peace. And you'll start to see some patterns, and you'll see patterns of like, who are the people that irritate you or annoy you or frustrate you? What are the situations where this is happening? And maybe, what is a pattern of even like related to the state of how you are taking care of yourself? So, what are your meals like? Are you eating properly? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you having water? Are you going outside? Are you checking in with yourself to see how, you're feeling in a day? So, this is, I want you really to do this from a place of being curious, to want to understand yourself better and want to understand, like, if you look at where, let's say, you felt annoyed or triggered Ask yourself some more why questions depending on the situation to understand what is it about this situation that gets me upset. What am I afraid of, right? What am I avoiding? What am I not wanting to see for myself? What am I needing? What am I feeling separate from? Lots of questions like this. And then as you write them all down, you'll start to see that maybe there's a belief underneath there. And oftentimes, I would say that these beliefs are around, low self-worth, of course, is one of them, and a fear of being rejected, a fear of being separation. These are the very common things at the core that we're often very afraid of. And so because of that, we then start to react and respond to life in this very annoyance kind of way. And in order to get to a place in life where you feel relationships are more smooth, maybe you're in a career or work that you're feeling, more passionate about, or at least that, you feel rewarded from what you're doing. Because let's face it, I think the two areas, right, that people have problems in are relationships and money. I mean, those are always the two things. Like, we want more money and we want better relationships, which ultimately I think means we want more peace and we want more freedom. I mean, I think those are at the root of those two areas of life where we find ourselves with challenges and problems that we would prefer not to be in. But in order to get out of those situations, because I think we're always trying to get out of something, we have to understand ourselves better, and we need to understand what is at the core of those belief systems. And the only way to start on your own is to observe, and to observe all the times that you get triggered and you get upset and you get irritated and you get frustrated, and to write down what happened there. And if you have time, you can dissect it a bit more, or you leave it for later and you look at it later, and then you see if there are any patterns with everything that's happening. Of course, the other way to do this is to work with someone, and that's what I do. And sometimes working with someone is very beneficial because the other person can ask questions, and in that asking of questions, you get deeper into, what are the reasons for this discomfort and this unhappiness in one's life. So sometimes we need a mirror, and we need, to work with someone in order to see that. So certainly I'm here for you if that's something you need. That is something that I do in my sessions. But you can do this on your own. And, the other aspect of this that I mentioned is your nervous system. So I think another part of this kind of work where we're developing ourselves and we're growing and we're trying to expand past this limited self is that we need to ground and to allow our nervous system to feel more safe. Because I think for many of us who've had trauma in our lives, we don't realize, but we're actually responding to life from a very wounded place. And we are responding to life from a nervous system that is very vigilant all the time and that feels unsafe. So nervous system work is also really important. And it can be as simple as, grounding, being in nature, focusing on breathing techniques. There's a lot of ways to regulate your nervous system. And I also have some courses on this if you want to look into wherever I put it in on this page, the courses that I have on the nervous system, because I have at least 2. So that can also help you. And it's really important to regulate the nervous system, to bring the nervous system into more times in the day where it feels safe, and at the same time to be observing, where am I reacting to life because of some sort of belief system, because of some sort of assumption that I have, about life and about this situation, whether it's relationships or about money or about career or about people. We respond because of these assumptions that we have. So these are really the main ways of starting to get to the root of what's happening, or starting to understand yourself so that you can start to change that, because you can change all these things. And as much as your subconscious mind is this machine that's just recording everything that you're really impressing upon it over and over and over again, then you can impress new information on it over and over and over again. And you can certainly do this work on your own of reprogramming your subconscious mind. And there's many ways of doing that. And that's the beauty of, I think, of where we are today. There's many ways of reprogramming ourselves. I love to work with a couple of modalities, and one of them is certainly working with sound and with frequency to assist in reprogramming in the cells and the DNA of a new code, really, right? A new message that I feel safe and I can actually create the life that I do want, in the sense of how I respond to life. Because as you start to change of how you are responding to life, life starts to actually change for you. And it starts to create an environment that's more about what you really want. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And, we just want to leave it open. I think ultimately what we're all looking for is more peace and maybe a feeling of feeling more grounded and feeling safe, and to feel like, we can actually achieve the things that we want to, little by little, every single day. And there are some areas that really can move the needle, and maybe I'll make another video on this, that really start to change your timeline once you figure out, okay, these are the areas that I get triggered. This is the belief system I have about it. Here's a way that I can change it. And then on the other side of that, of course, feeling safe with nervous system regulation, and then starting to make some really key choices. And some of those key choices are to step into fear. So when you make a decision, even though the fear is there, and we're talking about the fear of not being accepted, or, the fear that's basically in the mind, but not an actual physical fear. But once we can step into that and move past the fear, that's a big game changer, right? When we put boundaries up with people, with ourselves, of what is in alignment and what is not in alignment, right? So making those choices in boundaries and stepping past fear and doing things with more intention and in alignment with what you want, that really also starts to change the timeline that you're in. Because ultimately, every single day, you are always making choices. And I know that sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but you are actually in every now moment making a choice. You're making a choice of how you want to respond to things, right? There are other things that we don't have choice in, for sure, but we have choice in how we want to respond to a situation. We have choice on when we want to, decide that we're going to go for a walk instead of doing XYZ that is not very supportive, let's say, for your mind or body, whatever vice that is. So we have the opportunity to make these choices, and you still have a choice, right? I love the saying that, you are the chooser of your choices, because that's really true. And I am the chooser of my choices all the time. And one last thing that's coming to mind, that yesterday when I had a session with someone, that I was reminded of another great way to find out where you're responding from when you're responding to someone or to something, is to ask yourself, who is responding here? Is it my wounded self, or is it my higher self that's responding in this moment? And that can very quickly call you back to the present moment and to call you back to who you want to be and who you want to respond as. And it's a very simple question, right? Of who's responding here? Is it my wounded self? Because very often when we are responding to people, we are responding from our wounded self. And you know who that is and what those wounds are and those traumas are. And I hope that that helps you to gain a different perspective in whichever area you need help in. So with that, just give you a little sound. Just taking a few deep breaths here. And see where today you can give yourself that space to just observe with loving curiosity of who and what is here and why is she or he responding or reacting to a situation in a certain way. And just have that curiosity and that loving and compassionate, loving a way to really care for yourself and to ask questions. One of the biggest things I always really impress upon my clients is that this is not to overly criticize yourself, but it's actually to compassionately look at areas of your life that you're looking to change. So always doing it with compassion and with love. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.